thanks for joining us today. My name is Bill Merrell, and this is not going to be talking about politics or anything that we used to talk about. This is going to be talking about travel. All right, there's many reasons people can and can't travel anymore, but when I was serving in the military, I traveled extensively in the career field that I was in. So I had the opportunity to, in fact, put some programs together, and I thought I'd like to share them with you. The first day is today, and we're going to start with Seville, Spain. All right, Seville, Spain is my second loved city in the world. Actually, it's my first loved city in the world, but the bottom line is I'm living here and it's over there. Seville, Spain is something that, in fact, just is amazing. And I think after we talk about it for a little bit, you'll see why I enjoy it so much. The legends of Seville says it starts with Hercules finding it, Hercules being that person that we know from so-called mythical. In the center of Seville, there is two statues. One has Julius Caesar on it, one has Hercules. We talk about the history of Seville because of the fact that it, in fact, is so inclusive in today's life in Spain that, in fact, no matter what happens, it has a purpose and they fall back on their history to present their present time. As you see, the history of Seville goes back 3,000 years and has crossed paths with dozens of different people. The Visigoths, just the Romans, the Carthaginians, everybody have been there. It has, and the Tharsis is a small town bordering Portugal and Spain in the southwest corner of Spain. The Roman rule, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit of history because of the fact, one, I'm a social studies teacher, so I'm going to share some of this with you. The Roman rule from the 3rd century BC, when they beat the Carthaginians, who are from North Africa, and they beat and defeated by the Romans Scorpio Africanus in 2006. And from then on, Hispalis entered into the Age of Splendor. Okay, the Age of Splendor is a period of time that they started building a small city. Well, it's not a small city. After the Romans were into battle, what they would do, instead of marching a wounded army back into Rome, they would build a location that, in fact, has everything that they need and to entertain the troops and everything so they could be healthy again. Many of the people, in fact, stayed in these towns and helped the Roman soldiers then go elsewhere. And Julius Caesar gave the status a colony in 45 BC. The post-Roman rule during the period of time, as I said, the Vandals and Visigoths showed up, and the latter dominated Italica during the 6th and 7th century. This was known as the Hispalis and became the most important cultural center in the Occident. Now, the Occident is anywhere west of Rome. So that took up Egypt, that took up England, and all those other locations. The Moorish rule played a very, very, very important part of Seville and the Spanish rule. They ruled this area for 500 years. Okay, you see by the picture there, this is the Macarena Gate. This is one of the gates of the walled city of the Moorish city that, in fact, was built by the Moors during that period of time, and it's still up today. This picture was taken by me in 2015. The Macarena Gate might sound familiar to you because of the fact of the dance, the Macarena, and that came from this part of Seville. Okay. As you see there are a lot of buildings that were still left from the Moorish center, and the cathedral's Guaralda Bell Tower is one of the few minarets that are still available in the world today. Okay, the Castilian rule, this is whenever the Catholic kings took back Spain, and this was a period of time in King Fernando III, whose armies actually ousted the Moors, was sainted. And this means it's important to us, as we'll see as we go through the city and we see the cathedral. The Castilian royal family moved into the Moorish palace. Now, there was a few things that had to be done. And we'll talk about that once again when you talk about the structures of the buildings and how they had to change when the Christians took over. During this period of time, the city's Jewish population were either killed or they were in fact made part of they were changed over to Catholicism. The golden age of Spain is 1492, and we all remember that date because of the fact that this is the time of Columbus. Well, Columbus sailed from what we'll see here is the Tower of Gold, which happens to be in Seville. This is when Queen Isabella financed his trip to the New World. The monument you see there is El Cid, okay? And he, in fact, was a leader and given that name El Cid by the Moors because of the fact that he was a person who led not only Christian troops, but some Moorish troops against the Moors that were invading Spain at the time. The Golden Age. As you see a monument there, this city has tons of monuments, and unlike in America where we tear down the monuments of our past, they leave them up. And this is what makes this city so important because of the fact it takes pride in how they got there, even if they didn't agree with how they got there. Once again, we talked about 1492, and 1492 in Spain was good for many things. Once again, Christopher Columbus, the removal of the Moors as far as the Catholics were concerned. It also was the most blood-soaked period in Spanish history with the Spanish Inquisition. This centered out of Seville. So once again, they don't take pride in what happened. What they do is they remember what happened so it won't happen again. One of the things that happened here was the new Chamber of Commerce, because everything that had to come from the New World had to come through Seville. Okay, so all the other countries in Europe at that time, if they wanted anything from the New World, they had to financially and merchant-wise go through Seville, which made it very important. Once again, at 1492 marked the end of the Reconquest process where the Jews were expelled. The Moors were expelled. The Moors that didn't agree with the Spanish kings were expelled. The Chamber of Commerce was created to deal with the trade that was required. Now we jump ahead to the Spanish Civil War. And the Spanish Civil War was something that was headed up by General Francisco Franco. He was in charge of the Spanish troops in Spanish Morocco at the time. Okay, and that was interesting because he, being a socialist fascist, if I can use those terms together, wanted to remove the Republican government. Now, it's not the Republican as we know it today. It's a leftist Republican government. He thought that they were being too free with everything that was going on, so he wanted to take it back. Needless to say, being in his military position, he was very capable and able to get people to support him, and that's what happened. In March 1939, the government finally fell. Now, when we talk about this period of time, it's important to realize that these actions that happened back then, and that's almost 100 years ago, are a lot of the problems that are happening in Spain today. Barcelona was captured, and the rest of Catalonia fell as soon as Barcelona, being one of the main cities in Spain. That was part of the basis of why Catalonia and the rest of the Spanish government has issues today because of the fact of the way that they were taken over. Excuse me. Once again, in 1939, Franco made himself in charge. He gave himself all the power, but one of the things that were interesting is that he didn't get rid of the royal family. Even though they were outside of the country, he made an agreement with the people that whenever he had the opportunity or he was going to die or whatever, that before that would happen, he would name his successor. And his successor turned out to be King Juan Carlos, who was a member of the royal family. And in fact, once again, he was thought to be the person most able to continue Franco's rule. That didn't happen. Okay? When King Juan Carlos came in within a few weeks and months, he started to change to a more democratic society. And that period of time caused a lot of problems for Spain because of the fact, once again, you had a lot of people in power that supported Franco, and then you had a lot of people who were wishing to get back into a more democracy. 1939 was another period of time that caused a modern time in Spain because it became the center of a lot of activity from the world, not just them praising themselves, but they were starting to be able to hold some worldwide actions. During the 20th century, they had the opportunity to actually host 2 expositions, and these expositions were very important with what is happening today in Spain. Once again, the history that they have versus what they have today is so intertwined that it's very important to see how it's acting, okay? And when we get into the different things, this isn't just going to be a history lesson, by the way. We're going to get into the sites that you have to see if you ever visit there, okay? But several of the buildings that are there, or they were built to the standard that they had to exist. Most world fairs don't do that. Most world fairs build it so it works for the period of time, and then it's probably going to be torn down or dismantled. That's not happening here during these expositions. Now, here's where we start the really fun part of this whole thing. All right, must-see sites and events that you have to visit or enjoy while you're in Spain. The Royal Tobacco Company, which doesn't sound like much, okay, but King Ferdinand VI commissioned the construction of the tobacco factory. Now, the tobacco factory in Spain they built, or made, not built, 75% of all cigars that were made in Europe. If you wanted a cigar, 90% of the time it was going to come from Seville. This building was immense, and it is still in operation today. The Royal Tobacco Company you'll see on the right-hand side, you see there is a moat along here because tobacco was such an important product that people tried to steal it. So what they did was they put a moat around the entire thing, and they, in fact, they have their own prison inside this building because of people either from inside or outside would try to steal the tobacco. All right. This is also the centerpiece of the famous opera, Carmen. That, in fact, is actually, Carmen happens to be playing in Pittsburgh on March 28th, next month, at the Benedum Theater. You can buy tickets on Groupon if you want to see it. It's one of the most famous operas that there are, and it doesn't come very often. So if you want to see it and enjoy it, you might want to take a look at that. The Plaza de España, okay? The Plaza de España was part of the Ibero-American Exposition in 1929. This building was built to increase the ties. This whole exposition was to increase the ties between Spain and Portugal's colonies of the past and their host or mother country. All right. The United States was actually invited to build a facility there, and it's still in use today. The center piece of the administration building today is being used actually in a commercial that's on TV for some medicines, and I can't remember which one it was. But if you see the building, you'll go, oh, maybe that's it. The building is phenomenally long, okay? There's just no other way of saying it. It has 54,000 square feet. The new high school is about 320,000 square feet, so you get an idea on the length and width of it. In front of the building, you'll see there is a pond. It's more like a lake. If you get there for about €5, you can row a boat around, and it's a very romantic setting that you can, in fact, be with the one you love. You'll see the benches, and you'll see the difference, the slight differences. There's 48 of these, and the 48 benches on the right-hand side, each one depicts a province of Spain. So, I mean, this was built to last. This was built in 1929, and it looks exactly like that. Now, you look at the outside of the building, but you can't go inside because the government buildings and the regional military are still run out of that facility today. Like I said, I wish I could remember what commercial it is. Okay. Here are some of the buildings, and you'll see the Guatemala building, the Peru and United States building that are still being used today. That building is where the Consul General of the United States works out of. He and his staff still use that facility today, and it is, it's hard to, in fact, imagine that a building built in 1929 around here would be looking to tear it down and rebuild again. But over there, it was built to such standards at the time to still exist and be very viable. The Maria Luisa Park. Now, this is attached to the facility that we just saw. So this takes up hundreds of acres. This is not just a small something put in the middle of the town. This property was donated to the city of Seville in 1893 by Infanta Luisa Ferdinand, and it's to be used as a public park. Okay, public parks that they have in Spain are totally different than anything that we can imagine here in the United States. Okay, this is an example of it. You'll see that, I mean, these are beautiful parks that are set aside for the community. Anybody, you don't need to pay to get into it or anything else, but these parks are spotless. Okay, the key about Seville is the fact that every night the streets are washed by the firemen. There are no bugs. When we go stay there, the windows are open. There's no screens in the windows because you don't need them. All right, they're not allowed to make a lot of noise at nighttime. There's a lot of restrictions, so you can actually have the best sleep you ever had. You see the the statue on the lower left. Glorieta de Bicar was a poet, and you'll see the three faces, or the three areas that you see there, are the three faces that represent dreaming of love, finding love, and lost love. Okay, once again, these are statues. This person was from the early 20th century, but whenever they find someone worth building a statue for, they find a place in the park. This park is beautiful. You can take a carriage ride through it. You can ride a bike through it. You can walk through it for sure. The facilities there are unmatched. Here's some examples here. You have the Lions fountain on the left. You have the frog fountain on the right. These are only two. There's about 12 of these different fountains made throughout. Notice they're not damaged. No one comes in and puts graffiti on this because the entire city takes a lot of pride in these buildings. The building you see on the bottom is something that we would never imagine, but this was called the sewing building. This is whenever the Queen wanted to get away and sew. So she took a few hundred of her closest friends, and they went and they spent the day sewing in this building. It is now an art museum of all the Spanish artists that came from the Seville area. Okay, you've probably seen this building, and I want to go back one or two here. And you see these pillars that are on this building, and you also will see them on something you've probably seen many times before. The movies that were shot in Maria Luisa Park. You'll see the Star Wars, but you see these pillars right here. All right, these two movies, episode 1 and 2, were in fact shot partially in Maria Luisa Park. Kingdom of Heaven, The Wind and the Lion, Night and Day with Cruz, Lawrence of Arabia, and El Cid. And if you don't see these movies, or if you haven't seen them, go see them. They're worthwhile. And they talk a lot about the history of Spain. Lawrence of Arabia, of course, was shot in Spain because of the conditions that were available there. And they were shot also, the park was used in the British officers' quarters. And so that was part of the reason that was done. The Archaeological Museum of Seville is also in the park. And this building, this facility that you see here was built, like I said, almost 100 years ago, and it is in perfect condition. And the history, the Moorish and Roman history that you see in that building will keep you there for a month if you wanted to. I mean, like I said, I'm making a very short pit stop at all of these facilities because of the fact that literally we spent days in these facilities when we've been there. It's phenomenal to see the history that they take pride in, even though they weren't Roman, but they were Roman. Okay, and very much of the part of the city is Roman, and you'll see that as we go on here. Italica. Italica was the city that I mentioned earlier that after the Carthaginians were beat in 200 BC, the Romans built this city. And it had all of the trappings of, it had its own Colosseum, it had its own, it was the most modern city in the Occident, which once again is west of Rome. It had running water, it had a sewer system, it had everything that most other cities didn't get for hundreds of years. And it was really quite neat. It's only 10 kilometers or about 6 miles outside of Seville. You get there by bus. It cost about €1.50 or €2 to get there. It cost about €4 to get into the facility itself. But if you've never imagined what a Roman ruin is, this is where you can get a pretty good idea. The amphitheater here sat 25,000 people. Okay, and if you watch, let me see, what is, and I knew I was going to mess this up. What's the one that's been on HBO? Like I said, I knew I was going to mess this one up. But anyhow, I'll get to it here in a second. The Game of Thrones. If you've seen the Game of Thrones, you've seen this amphitheater, as you see the picture underneath there with the Game of Thrones. When we were there in 2015, there was a young student from the University of West Virginia who was actually cleaning these tile floors with dental picks. I mean, that's how intensive it is. And you see the walls and things here in Italica. A lot of these stones were taken by the Moors to build what is now known as Seville. Now, one thing I will point out, I mentioned earlier that they had modern things. Well, if you notice down on the right-hand corner here, this is a urinal for the gladiators. Now, the other people had to use public toilets, but in fact, they actually had a piping system for the gladiators so they would not be bothered. Like I said, there's so many neat things within a short period of time here. The next thing is the Cathedral of Seville. It's the third largest cathedral in the world and the largest Gothic building in the world. It contains the tomb of Christopher Columbus, okay, and was built over the ruins of the Almahd Mosque. And some of the elements in the structure are still Arab style, and you'll see that here as it comes out. Like the wonderful tower in the back of the cathedral, which is one of the few of the minarets still surviving today. The Cathedral of Seville is phenomenal. I mean, we have nice churches. They're usually modern. They have some nice... This is a church. When I was 19 years old, the first time I was in Seville, when I was stationed outside of Morone Air Force Base, I went from 12 o'clock at night till 3 o'clock in the morning, sat in the first pew of this church, and stared at this altar. The altar you see on the right-hand side is... there's no other word to say it. It is absolutely phenomenal. It is 66 feet high and about 59 feet wide. These are carvings that were covered in gold. Okay, so the whole thing is absolutely magnificent. This is the way it looks 24 hours a day because it has light shining on it. This church, and we talked about how things changed. The cathedral used to have its entrance on the other side where the minaret is. But because of the fact that that faced to Mecca, they changed the entrance to the side of the church. and that you see over here. All right. Now the side entrance now faces the entrance of the Alcazar, which is the palace of the Spanish king, and it's still used today as a palace. All right. The chapel that you see on the left, all right, is the Silver Chapel. They have 80 chapels in this church, and at one time they had over 500 masses a day. And this is because, once again, the entire country was Catholic and at that time, and they, in fact, everybody had to go to church almost on a daily basis. The next thing we'll see is the tomb of Christopher Columbus, which happens to be in the church itself. Okay, and it's interesting because the tomb of Christopher Columbus is shared, and I'll get into that a little bit. You'll see that the pallbearers on the left-hand side here, each one has a breast shield, and each one represents a different kingdom of Spain, including Castile, Aragon, Navarra, and Leon. And those are the four. Now, the interesting part in this is in this area, there are only 4.4 ounces of what is believed to be Christopher Columbus. So it's not like an entire body. It's more like a little jar full, okay? Now, the problem with it is, and this is an interesting aspect of this, you'll see at the bottom the Columbus Lighthouse, which happens to be in the Dominican Republic. In 1877, nearly a century after the late construction worker working on the cathedral renovation in the Dominican uncovered a lead box which said, "The illustrious and excellent man, Don Colon, Admiral of the Ocean Sea." Now, Don Colon is the real name of Christopher Columbus. So they believe that they have it. Now, the problem is they buried this box in the middle of this large facility, which is 600 feet long and about 400 feet wide, and it's in the shape of a cross. But they buried the box or whatever they had inside that, so they can't do DNA testing, which Spain has in fact done. We're going to take a break right now, and we'll come back with the rest of this building as well as the rest of the sights to see in Spain. Look forward to seeing you on the other side. Thanks for coming back. Just to do a little recap here on the tomb of Christopher Columbus. In the Cathedral of Seville, once again, there's only 4.4 ounces of what is considered Christopher Columbus in this tomb. All right. The benefit that Spain had whenever they were trying to do DNA is the fact that they actually have his brother entombed in Seville. So they were actually able to do DNA, where the folks down in the Dominican Republic don't have anybody to do DNA studies against, but they also have a problem because they buried the box inside of this building that they built, the Columbus Lighthouse. King Fernando of Castile, we talked about him earlier. He's the one who was sainted after he kicked the Moors out of Spain. He was considered incorrupt. Now, incorrupt doesn't mean like the language that we use today. Incorrupt means that he wasn't going to be buried like most people because he is now a saint. He is in the Cathedral of Seville in the Royal Chapel. Now, you see the Royal Chapel here, and I try to put the pictures close. So you see the top of this behind the altar, and you see the top of this. Well, here he is. You see the yellow area on the left-hand side. He is laying in state, and every May 30th, you can come in to see him. Now, he is sort of mummified, but once again, he is, if you see him, he looks just like somebody sleeping. and it's really quite scary. But once again, this whole front of this is taken off every May 30th, and so they have San Fernando Day, where the people can come in, walk around the altar, pay their respects to the saint who pushed the Moors out. Like I said, the cathedral is a fascinating place. It also holds the treasury of Seville. Now, you have to remember that the Catholic Church ran everything. They ran the government, they ran the social life, they ran everything back then, but they also collected the taxes. So the treasury is quite wonderful. All right, you'll see some of the treasures that you see here. If you take a look to the lower left picture, this person is standing here, and this is about 60 feet tall. Okay, solid silver. It is absolutely amazing of the different artifacts that are left here. But the two main things here that you'll see, the picture on the upper right, you see the yellow circle there, and the yellow circle has a crown from the thorn of Christ's crown at the crucifixion. Okay, once again, Seville being, Spain being a Catholic country, they were able to, in fact, supposedly get an actual thorn from the crown, and they put it in this place of honor in the treasury. The really fascinating stuff for most people is the crown of virgins that you see in the center picture. Okay, it was actually made in 1904. All right, it is known as the Virgin of Kings. Note the cherubs. There's 4 cherubs that are around here. The one that's circled happened to be hand carved out of the largest pearl that they ever found. Okay, and that's one of the things, just one of the things that makes this crown interesting. This is 22 karat gold, and it has 12,000 gemstones. So you get an idea that that whoever the artist was who made this, in fact, and this is, needless to say, it's very large. It's probably about 1 foot wide and 1 foot deep, and about 1.5 feet tall. So whatever person they expected to wear this had to have a neck brace to help them, because this was very heavy. Once again, I pointed out the thorn in the crown. In the treasury today, the amount of silver that is there, they have about 41,000 or close to 42,000 pounds of silver, which in today's silver market is about $10 million, which doesn't seem to be a lot. But in the Seville Cathedral, there has been estimated of 88,000 pounds of gold, which at today's prices is about $2.3 billion worth of gold that is in the Seville treasury. Now, whenever we were there years ago, we asked one of the guards, is this all they have? And he mentioned to us, because this is an area about the size of a basketball court, and these are lined against the walls, and there's like 9 walls down the center of it, and in fact, like I said, it was phenomenal, the amount of pieces of art in that they had there. He said that's about 1% of what the treasure actually has. So, like I said, it's amazing, the different things. The next page, or the next slide, you'll see there's some more of the artist work that is in. And this was just during the day that we were there taking pictures. This isn't like taken out of any books or anything like that from other people. Excuse me. The phenomenal artwork throughout here, as well as the building itself that houses these artworks. It's absolutely just truly amazing. You'll sit there, and some of these chalices are 1 foot, 2 feet tall. It's just to look at this, you could spend a week just in the treasury on that one day, taking a look at all the magnificent artistry that has been in fact accomplished. Still at the cathedral, all right, La Grava is the tower, and here you see the Tower of Gold on the left picture, and the minaret on the right in bright yellow, okay, these are probably the two main structures that people see whenever they come to Seville. This, oh, let me go back here, a little experience here on, the minaret was actually built by the Moors, all right. It was, in fact, part of the building in the 1500s, and they decided to leave it there. This used to be around the entrance, but once again, I mentioned earlier that the entrance of the cathedral, because it was a Moorish facility before, faced to Mecca. So whenever they moved the entrance to the side of the building, it then faces the entrance of the castle. Okay, so that they made some changes here. There's 35 gently sloping ramps that go from the bottom of this up to the top. So if you're going to, in fact, try to walk to the top to get the view, it's over 300 feet tall, basically a football field. The reason why there's ramps instead of steps is because whenever it was being used as a minuet, it had, in fact, the person, and I'm trying to remember what his name is, the muezzin, rode a donkey to the top of this and called the faithful to prayer 5 times a day. Now, this was usually an older man who, in fact, then had this job. So that's why they had the ramps instead of steps. Like I said, but if you're going to do this, I would suggest if you have heart issues or other medical problems that you don't take this up. Spain is usually very warm, and that building is very warm inside. One of the interesting things about the Cathedral of Seville is the stuffed crocodile. Now you look at this, I mean, this building has almost anything for everybody. It is always a fun place for kids to look up and see what's going on here. It was a gift from the Sultan of Egypt to the King Alfonso X for asking for the hand of the marriage of his daughter. Even though the Sultan did not wed the prince in the end, the crocodile stayed and was stuffed, and now is the cathedral's one of their quirkiest sights to see. The Alcazar of Seville. This is the royal palace that was built over the Muslim palace that was there. Okay, the Christian kings of Seville still use this, and it's still used today. Whenever the king and queen comes to Seville, they stay there, they meet ambassadors and everything else still there. Here, Muslim, Mujajar, and Christian architecture styles are all fused together, and it is a fascinating facility. There was air conditioning back 2,000 years ago by running water, cold water through the middle of this, and it cooled down the area around it. Here's a picture of the inside of some of the areas. It's, like I said, the entrance of the Alcazar is here, and once again, it faces the entrance of the Cathedral of Seville. Whenever they changed it from facing Mecca to facing the Christian kings. This is one of the areas that is, I mean, like, you can't explain this without being there because of the fact that it is so absolutely beautiful. All of these places are kept up every day. This place is spotless. There's no trash laying around. There's no dead flowers or anything else. Everything is alive and very beautiful. The bottom right picture you see is the roof of the area that the king would meet the ambassadors of different countries or the consul generals and things. This would be the political hub of the castle at any given time, still today. But you'll see by the picture on the left-hand side, the outside of the building is as beautiful as the inside of the building. It has so many things going on. And it's so funny because whenever you're looking at some of the Moorish work that's done, it keeps repeating the same phrase, God is good. And because the Moorish workers were so used to doing that, they would have to have somebody come behind them, and if they made that statement perfectly, somebody would chip it. And their reason is only God can make something perfect. And it was, I mean, like I said, it's fascinating to see the workmanship and and as beautiful as this is, and like I said, and it really is, and the Muslim work that you see here in the upper left-hand side, the Christian workmen were just as good. I mean, it was just, I mean, like to have these people today making things, you probably couldn't afford it anymore. The next area we're going to look at is the Tower of Gold. Okay, the Tower of Gold was built by the Moors in 1220 to 1221. There were two towers actually at that time. One was the Tower of Silver, which was across the river, and one was the Tower of Gold. In the 1755 earthquake, the Tower of Silver basically was so badly damaged that they had to tear it down. The Tower of Gold was damaged, but they didn't want to tear it down. The locals wanted to keep it. And the king stepped in, and he then financed the recovery and the building of the Tower of Gold again, so to its current state today. It gets the tower, it gets golden color because of the materials that were used, and straw or hay was mixed with the material and give it that golden feature. But now, whenever you look at it, there are actually yellow lights and golden lights that are put up against the building. Tower of Gold is exactly that. This is the location where I'm sure in 1492 you read that Isabel financed Christopher Columbus, and this is where he sailed from. The Tower of Gold. And you'll see on the picture on the left, I took it, that shows the view. These were military towers. This is anybody coming up and down. Once again, at that time, this was the hub of all international purchasing from the West. So they had to come up through the river, and the military kept guard on this to make sure that there weren't any people that were trying to come up to, in fact, take anything from the city of Seville. There was a chain that linked between the Tower of Gold and the Tower of Silver. So if they lifted that and attached it, no ship could pass, which then would make them easy targets because of this facility and the other facilities around the walled city. Inside the tower, it's turned into a museum. Of course, everybody has always learned about the Nina, Pinta, and the Santa Maria. These are carvings of those three ships. These are the three ships that, of course, Columbus sailed in 1492 to the New World. Okay, you'll see in the background on the picture up in the upper left more museum pieces. These are from artists of the time that had drew the pictures of Columbus leaving, of the Queen giving him, her blessing for the trip, things like this. The mushroom, okay, in the opening picture you saw this unique building, and I'll say it's unique. It's 490 by around 230 feet wide. Is approximately 26 meters or 85 feet in height. And once again, the buildings, most of the buildings in Seville are in fact, most of the buildings in Seville are below 3 stories. So when we're talking about these buildings, anything above that stands up. We saw the picture of the Tower of Gold and the minaret standing in the building at nighttime. Well, this stands all by itself. Once again, this building was supposed to be made for about 80 million euro. Okay, but by the time it was done, the cost went to about $150 million. The price went crazy, and you'll see here in a minute why. Las setas de la Encarnación. The mushroom, basically. That's what the locals call it, and you'll see why here in a minute. The problem with this facility is the lowest level, the basement level, is a museum. All right. Whenever they started to build it, they found so many Roman and Moorish artifacts that they, in fact, weren't allowed by the Spanish government to get rid of them. The second floor, or the main floor, first floor, are stores. The fish market, where you can exchange coins, where you the meat market, these kind of things. It's a normal, everyday kind of market. The first floor above that is a restaurant, okay, where you can go and see and take a look over the city. The floor above that is, in fact, the opportunity for the observation deck. And it's sort of like I said, it's a unique building. That's what it looks like at nighttime. It's wooden. When you look at it, you just, like I said, it's just phenomenal. And this will come back, and you'll see it in the picture here when we're talking about Holy Week. But this is a building that offers not only present day, past, but the future. And that's exactly what they were trying to do. The antiquarium underneath where the Roman and Moorish remains were discovered are, as I said, is a museum. The first floor is a public plaza. They have great tapas there, by the way, if you ever go. And the second and third floor above that is the terrace from the restaurant. Here's an example from the restaurant, the picture overlooking Seville, and you see in the background here, all right, the buildings that we've talked about, the Tower of Gold, and here is the minaret. All right, this is another picture looking in the daytime, looking up at it. And here is looking from the observation deck, and once again, you see the same buildings, but here in the distance. The city of Seville is one of the few. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the antiquarium. This is what it looks like on the basement floor, and here's what it looks like on the center floor. The Plaza de Toros, the Plaza of the Bulls. Okay, Seville is still having active bullfighting. It's one of the few cities in the world that still has it. It's amazing, this facility. Of course, you can always tell where the Americans sit because they're cheering for the bull, and it's really sort of put you off because you have to realize this is an art form. This has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it, in fact, once again connects to activities of today, not just in the bullfight, but the history of the bullfighting. This plaza was built by the Moors. It was, again, fixed and completed in 1881 by the Christians who were, in fact, in charge. The main gate was actually taken from a convent, and you'll see it here in a second. And being carried as a matador, being carried through these gates is one of the highest honors you can possibly have. Here's the main gate in the upper left picture here. And once again, this is a facility that would rival any top-notch baseball facility that we have. It's very large. It has a museum to it. It has, in the museum, you'll see pictures of the bullfighting. You'll see the golden outfits of the matadors. It's just, like I said, if you look past what I'm sure Peter would say was animal cruelty and everything else, and look at it as an art form, this is something that I think that everyone could experience without being offended, because it's not treated like a butcher shop. It's treated as an art form. But to tell you what happens to the bulls after, they are given to shelter. The meat and everything is given to shelters and the homeless around that area. One of the things that we're going to spend a little time, and I know it's going to be sort of, interesting, is Holy Week, Semana Santa de Seville. This is a period of time prior to Easter that, in fact, the entire city of Seville, and actually the entire region, if not the entire country, comes to Seville and watches these parades, is what they are. Each church or brotherhood has one or two of these kind of floats, okay? And the floats are usually representing their parish, their church, whatever it is. If it's Virgin Mary, or if it's one of the saints or whatever else, it has a statue, usually in gold or silver, in the middle of this. These run between 3,000 to 4,000 pounds, and they're not driven around by tractors or trucks like we see floats in parades. These are, in fact, carried by people who, in fact, practice all year to do this. This is an honor from their church or their brotherhood to be people who, in fact, carry this float. Once again, I was 19 my first time to Seville in the military, and I happened to be there during Holy Week, and it was the most deeply religious experience I have ever felt. I talk about it today and I still get chills because of the fact that there are probably 80 of these floats in the parade. And there are people underneath there. There can be 40 to 60 people that are carrying these. And they're sharing possibly 50 to 80 to 100 pounds each and carrying these for an 8-hour period for the entire Holy Week each day to, in fact, do this. Now, the interesting part about this, and there are military bands, but they're not playing marching music in here. They're playing very low sonatas and things. But there can be people coming out on their balconies. If a person wants to sing a sonata to the Virgin Mary, they can come out of their balcony and, in fact, start singing a sonata. A sonata, of course, is a song as a sort of a blessing to the Virgin Mary. Everything stops. The folks that are carrying these put them down. The crowds are perfectly quiet. I mean, like I said, this person comes out, he doesn't have a microphone, doesn't have a speaker. He comes out and he's singing. And once they're done singing, these people pick these back up and start moving along again. And this is part of the reason, I'm sure, why it takes 8 hours to complete this. But they do it for the entire week, all right, of 8 hours a day. The reason why we talk about this is because, once again, the history of Spain and their present day brings so much together. This has happened now for hundreds of years. And once again, the crowds here, you don't hear anybody, being rowdy. There is no crime during this period of time because nobody wants to commit a crime because, believe me, the consequences are not what they want. You see over here to the right, the circle with a person with, he has a bandana around his head because he's been carrying this very heavy item for probably 6 or 7 hours. But they crawl under, and whenever it stops, they get out, get some air, and then they crawl back underneath to, in fact, carry it some more. You see the mushroom in the background here. I mean, talking about bringing the old to the new. This is a phenomenal scene, and this lasts all Holy Week. So the entire city of Seville sort of takes a break, and in fact, the way that they go around the city of Seville is different every year. So you really have to check into your hotel or whatever, and in fact find out what it is. One of the interesting parts is the people that follow, the penitents that follow the floats are looking like what we see as the KKK robes, but they're not. Many times there'll be priests, there'll be other people, but their identity is hidden because as far as they're concerned, God is the only one who knows who they are. The people outside don't have to know, but they are being penitent and they're walking for probably 8 hours for the 7 days before Holy Week. The reason why I bring all of this up is because 2 weeks after the Holy Week is the Feria. Now the Feria is like Texas State Fair on steroids. It started out as a place where farmers would bring their bulls to have them purchased to, in fact, fight in the bull ring. It has now turned into an equestrian situation where families or businesses or unions have what they call a caseta, or a big, very large tent. And they, in fact, in the caseta have a dance floor, tables set up, they have a bar set up, they have a restaurant set up, they have restrooms set up, and each one of these, once again, I made the comment that, in fact, I was there when I was 19, and I started past one of these casetas at around 9 o'clock at night, and I left there at 4 o'clock the following morning, and I started to walk past the next one and pulled in there until about 7 o'clock that morning. The people of Spain, people of Seville all participate, okay? You see the equestrian, the outriders, you see the beautiful carriages. Some of them are gold inlaid and everything else. The Seville, the women all dress up. during this entire week. It's phenomenal to see the entire city. These carriages are driving through the city, so you see motorcycles and you see police motorcycles and you see buses and everything, and they're all in line. The neat thing about this is the fact that here's the casetas that I was talking about. You see they're all different sizes, they're all different heights, they're all different. But once again, the people there are so wonderful that you're not a stranger. Hints of traveling to Seville, and I see we only have a couple minutes left, so we'll go through this fast. Don't rent a car. The cars in Seville, you'll see every one of them has road rash on both sides. The day our owner of our VBRO came to pick us up, we packed up our luggage and went to the airport, and he knocked the mirror off because the streets are so close, and he didn't even stop. But that's part of for the course there. Most hotel rates are good, but VRBO or whatever it is, look into those. We spent our 2 weeks in a castle that we spent $200 a week in, and it was a 1-bedroom, kitchen, dining room, and the whole thing. Okay, so once again, time is the killer in this whole thing. There's a lot of things you can do. Don't mess with the local police. We were talking about that earlier. The Guardia Civil will answer any question in any language you have. City Pass, you can rent day trips from Seville. Go to Madrid. It's 193 miles an hour, and you can, in fact, catch the bullet train, which is something unusual. Needless to say, I'm out of time. So I'd like to thank you very much. Next time, we'll be visiting Rome and the ancient city of Ostia Orteca. So look forward to seeing you next month, and look forward to seeing the Italian